the game are being forged under intense pressure. Today we are dissecting a truly fascinating tactical battle from the Under-23 Queensland Premier League 1. This is a matchup that on paper looked like a completely foregone conclusion. We had the high-flying Brisbane Strikers Under-23 squad, a historic powerhouse sitting comfortably at second in the league standings, travelling to face a resilient but heavily struggling Northstar Under-23 side fighting down at 10th. The venue was Old Challangan Park, a ground famous for its heavy pitch condition and close quarters atmosphere, where the fans are right on top of the action. What we witnessed over 90 grueling minutes was an absolute masterclass in defensive organization, rigid tactical discipline, and ultimate frustration. The final whistle blew with the scoreboard reading a scoreless 0-0 tie. Now to the casual fan who just looks at a box score, a 0-0 draw might sound like a boring game. But if you strip away the scoreboard and analyze the high stakes chess match that took place on the grass, this game was an absolute clinic. It showed exactly why youth soccer is so widely unpredictable and how a perfectly executed game plan can bridge a massive gap in raw individual talent. Today we are going to break down exactly how Northstar pulled off this defensive miracle where the Brisbane Strikers went wrong in possession. The crucial tactical adjustments that altered the second half and which young prospects put on a show that professional scouts should be writing down in their notebooks. To truly appreciate this scoreless stalemate, you have to understand the massive gulf between these two clubs heading into the weekend. The Brisbane Strikers under-23s have been an absolute juggernaut this season. They came into this match boasting one of the most potent explosive offenses in the entire developmental pyramid, averaging over 2.5 goals per game. Their entire philosophy is built on relentless possession, fluid positional rotation, and isolating their lightning fast fingers. In one-on-one situation out wide, they want to pin you back in your own defensive third. Move the ball from side to side at high speed and wear your players down physically and mentally until a gap opens up in your backline. They play with a swagger and an attacking confidence that usually terrifies opposing defenses before the game even starts. On the flip side of the coin, Northstar has had an incredibly rough campaign. They have struggled mightily to find any sort of defensive consistency, coughing up way too many goals from open play and looking highly vulnerable whenever they get caught in defensive transitions. So, what does a coaching staff do when they are facing a superior, high octane offensive machine? You don't try to beat them at their own game. If Northstar had come out and tried to go toe to toe in an open attacking match, they likely would have been carved to pieces within the first 20 minutes. Instead, Northstar's coach rolled out a beautifully drilled low block. A low block simply means dropping your entire team deep into your own defensive territory, keeping the defensive and midfield lines incredibly close together and completely sacrificing possession of the ball. North Star set up in a rigid 5-4-1 formation out of possession, which occasionally shifted to a compact 4-5-1 depending on which flank the ball was on. Their primary directive was the evening was crystal clear: protect the center of the field at all costs. completely deny any space in the channels, and eliminate the threat of any throw through balls over the top. They dared the Brisbane Strikers to try and break them down through a forest of legs. From the very opening whistle, the script for this match was written in stone. The Brisbane Strikers dominated the ball, controlling nearly 70% of the total possession throughout the first 45 minutes. They recycled the ball patiently through their centre backs and their lone holding midfielder, passing it horizontally, trying to get Northstar players into breaking their shape and chasing the ball. But Northstar absolutely refused to take the bait. Their tactical discipline was immense. When the strikers' central playmakers picked up the ball near the center circle, they were immediately met by a wall of white shirts, but crucially no one from Northstar broke ranks. They shifted laterally as a single connected unit, moving like a pendulum across the pitch. One of the most critical tactical battles of the first half was how Northstar handled the strikers' inverted wingers. The strikers love to have their wide attackers cut inside onto their stronger feet, which usually opens up massive corridors for their fullbacks to overlap and cross from the baseline. To neutralize this weapon, Northstar's wide midfielders put in a heroic defensive shift. Every single time a striker's winger received the ball on the flank, he was instantly double teamed. The Northstar fullback would hold his ground to prevent the cut inside, while the wide midfielder would sprint back to block the outer path. This tactical trap completely neutralized the striker's swing play, forcing them to constantly pass backward or resort to launching low percentage crosses into a heavily crowded penalty box. North Star's towering centre backs had an absolute field day clearing those crosses. They won nearly every single aerial duel in the first half, marshalling the penalty box with superb positioning and physical dominance. As the first half wore on, you could see the frustration visibly building within the Brisbane Strikers squad. Their passing tempo began to slow down, becoming incredibly predictable, stagnant, and literal. Whenever they did manage to find a rare pocket of space between the lines, North Star's defensive midfielders were right there to snap into a hard tackle or commit a clever tactical foul to disrupt the attacking rhythm. By the time the referee blew his whistle for halftime, the strikers had racked up hundreds of passes but had registered zero genuine shots on target. Northstar had successfully turned the game into a gritty, slow-paced battle, completely suffocating the favourites' attacking threat. Heading into the locker rooms at the break, both managers had massive structural decisions to make. For the Brisbane Strikers, the challenge was obvious: how do you inject urgency, speed, and unpredictability into a possession game that has gone completely stale? They need to alter their spacing because playing around the perimeter of North Star's defensive wall was yielding absolutely nothing. In the second half, we saw the strikers make a distinct tactical tweak. They instructed their central midfielders to stop sitting deep and instead start making aggressive vertical runs from deep position directly into the penalty box. The goal here was to drag North Star centre backs out of their fixed position and create defensive chaos. They also pushed their defensive line incredibly high, essentially sitting right at the halfway line, to squeeze North Star even further into their own box and to execute an immediate counter press the second they lost the ball. North Star's coaching staff, meanwhile, knew that surviving another 45 minutes of pure relentless defending would be nearly impossible without some sort of counter attacking outlet. Their players were already burning through an immense amount of energy. Their halftime adjustment focused heavily on transition phase. Instead of just clearing the ball aimlessly upfield whenever they won it back, they instructed their players to target their lone center forward immediately. The plan was for the forward to use his body to ho- hold up the ball by a few seconds of time and allow the wide fielders to sprint into a massive vacuums of space left behind by strikers heavily advanced fullbacks. This subtle shift completely transformed the dynamic of the second half. It was no longer a one-way training exercise. It turned into an intense, high-stakes transition game where a single mistake could cost either side the entire match. The second half opened with a completely different intensity. The Brisbane Strikers came out with their energy turned all the way up to 11. Their passing was much crisper, their off-the-ball movement was significantly sharper, and they finally began to unlock the low block. Around the 55th minute, we witnessed the absolute best scoring opportunity of the entire match. The strikers executed a brilliant combination play right on the edge of the 18-yard box. A lightning fast 1-2 pass that finally slipped their star attacking midfielder through a rear gap in the Northstar backline. He found himself one-on-one with the Northstar goalkeeper and struck a low, powerful shot aimed directly at the bottom left corner. It looked like a guaranteed goal, but the Northstar goalkeeper pulled off a truly spectacular full extension diving save, clawing the ball around the post by a matter of inches. It was a defining game-saving moment that breathed massive belief into the underdogs. As the clock ticked past the 70-minute mark, the brutal physical toll of the North Stars' defensive game plan really began to show. Fatigue was setting in, legs were growing heavy, and the tightly knit gaps between their midfield and defensive lines finally began to widen. The strikers started finding their creative playmakers in those dangerous pockets of space right outside the box. They hit the crossbar of a looping header from a corner kick, and just a few minutes later, they had a massive penalty shout waved away by the referee after a fierce physical collision in the box. The pressure was absolutely suffocating, and it felt like Northstar was teetering on the edge of a total collapse. Yet, this is exactly where Northstar showed an incredible amount of mental toughness and character. When their physical legs failed them, their collective heart completely took over. Players were throwing their entire bodies in front of powerful shots, making desperate last second sliding blocks and sacrificing everything to protect their net. On the counter-attack, they actually managed to carve out two incredibly dangerous opportunities of their own. They utilized a substitute winger who brought fresh, explosive legs into the match, catching the strikers' high defensive line completely exposed. While those counterattacks didn't ultimately result in a goal, they served a massive tactical purpose. They forced the strikers to keep a couple of defenders back, preventing them from throwing absolutely everyone forward into the box during the chaotic final minutes of the injury time. When the final whistle blew, North Star celebrated like they had won the championship, while the strikers dropped to their knees in utter disbelief. When a match ends scoreless in a scoreless 0-0 tie, the defensive player deserved every single bit of praise. And today we have to give a massive shout out to North Star Central Defensive View. They put on an absolute clinic in old school no nonsense elite defending. Their reading of the game was flawless from start to finish. They never overcommitted. They never chased opportunities. They never chased opposing players into the midfield, and they remained completely calm under an immense avalanche of pressure. Every single cross that flew into the box was met with a decisive, commanding header, and their constant vocal communication ensured that the backline never lost its shape. Even when the strikers threw extra bodies forward in late in the game, they anchored the team and gave everyone around them the confidence to keep fighting. Another standout performer who deserves immense recognition is Northstar's holding defensive midfielder. Operating in absolute engine room of the pitch, his specific job was to shadow and disrupt the striker's main creative playmaker, and he executed that assignment to absolute perfection. He covered an unbelievable amount of ground, constantly cutting off passing lanes, making crucial interceptions, and acting as human shield right in front of his centre backs. For an under 23 player, his tactical maturity, patience, and spatial awareness were well beyond his years. He didn't look like a youth player out there. He looked like a seasoned veteran who knew exactly how to manage the tempo of a football match. On the Brisbane Strikers side, despite the immense frustration of failing to find the back of the net, their central midfielder showed exactly why he is so highly rated within the national developmental system. He was the one player on the pitch who was constantly trying to invent something out of nothing. He spread the play beautifully with pinpoint 40-yard diagonal long balls and kept trying to find creative, progressive passing angles through the dense wall of white shirts. His technical ability on the ball and his first touch were clearly a cut above, but he was simply starved of space by an opponent that gave him absolutely zero room to breathe. This specific match will serve as an incredible learning experience for him and the entire Strikers attacking unit. It showed them that talent alone isn't always enough. You have to have the tactical variance to take down a team that completely denies you the center of the pitch. So, what does this scoreless tie mean for both these teams as we look for the bigger picture of under 23 Queensland Premier League One season? For North Star, this 0-0 result feels like an absolute massive victory, taking a well-earned point away from the second-place team in the league is a gigantic achievement on its own, but more importantly, it provides a massive psychological boost to the young squad. It proves to these players that when they are completely organized, disciplined, and willing to sacrifice and work for one another, they can completely with absolutely anyone in the vision. This shutout can easily be the turning point and the firm foundation they build upon to string together some wins and climb out of the bottom tier of the standings. It proves they possess the grit and structural identity required to survive tough matches. For the Brisbane Strikers, this is undoubtedly an incredibly bitter pill to swallow and a major wake-up call for the rest of the campaign. When you are actively chasing a championship trophy, these are the exact types of games you are expected to win, no matter how defensively stubborn the opponent is. Dropping critical points against a 10th place team severely damages their immediate title ambitions and allows the league leaders to pull even further ahead in the race. It exposes a slight structural vulnerability in their overarching attacking philosophy. It shows that when a team completely denies them space to run into and pass a highly disciplined low block, the strikers heavily struggle to find a viable backup plan. They cannot rely solely on individual talent and isolating their wingers. They desperately need to develop better central combinations, faster ball circulation, and a much more clinical edge in front of the goal if they want to secure silverware at the end of the year. As a wrap up our deep dive analysis of this intense grinding battle at O'Callaghan Park, this match serves as a beautiful reminder of the tactical complexity of the saucer. It isn't always about a flashy step over strict shots or high scoring blowout games. Sometimes the most compelling thing on a soccer pitch is a perfectly executed, highly disciplined defensive game plan that completely breaks the spirit of a heavyweight opponent. Northstar earned every single blade of grass and every single ounce of that point through sheer hard work, structural awareness, and tactical discipline. Meanwhile, the Brisbane Strikers must return straight to the drawing board with plenty of tough questions to answer before their next highly anticipated fixtures against Robina City. Northstar, on the other hand, will look to carry this massive defensive momentum into another incredibly tough upcoming match against Sunshine Coast Wanderers. It is shaping up to be an absolute thrilling finish to the season, and if this match was an indication, the race in the youth ranks is wide open. Thank you so much for tuning in to our post-match analysis. Keep your eyes on these young stars because the heavy technical lessons they are learning out on the pitch today are actively shaping the world-class professional players of tomorrow. Keep enjoying the beautiful game.